there comes a moment, a quiet, almost invisible moment, when something shifts inside you and you realize the version of you that kept shrinking, kept tolerating, kept saying, "It's fine," when it wasn't. That version wasn't keeping the peace. It was losing itself. And maybe that's exactly why you're here, because somewhere along the way, you learned what it costs to bend yourself into whatever shape someone else needed. You learned that making yourself smaller never made anyone love you more. It just made you easier to overlook. So today, we're going to talk about 5 things psychology and emotional intelligence research consistently point back to when it comes to people who finally stop shrinking and start standing in something unshakable. Not loudly, not dramatically, just solidly. The first one might be the hardest pill to swallow. Never apologize for having standards. Most of us grew up believing that being flexible, easygoing, and accommodating was how you kept people close. That if you just tolerated a little more, accepted a little less, kept your mouth shut about the things that hurt, people would appreciate you for it, would stay because of it. But that's not what actually happens. What behavioral psychology shows us, consistently, is that when you lower your standards for someone, you don't earn their appreciation. You train them to expect less from themselves around you. Your standards aren't walls designed to keep people out. They're filters. They're the thing that separates what genuinely belongs in your life from what only looks like it does. And here's the pattern that emotional intelligence research keeps surfacing. The people who react most aggressively when you set a boundary are almost always the people who benefited most when you didn't have one. Your job is not to make everyone comfortable. Your job is to keep yourself whole. The second thing is something a lot of empathetic people struggle with deeply. Stop trading your peace for someone else's chaos. There are people who move through the world like weather systems, loud, unstable, constantly pulling the people around them into the turbulence. And if you're someone who naturally cares, who naturally tries to help, you can find yourself slowly absorbing their storms, carrying weight that was never yours to carry, explaining yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you, shrinking your own needs to make space for their noise. Studies on emotional contagion show that prolonged exposure to dysregulated people, people who live in constant drama, instability, or emotional chaos, genuinely affects your own nervous system over time. You start carrying anxiety that isn't yours. You start operating in a state of low-grade stress that feels normal because it's been there so long. The answer isn't anger. It isn't conflict. It's distance. Quiet, deliberate distance. Because peace is something you have to actively protect. Chaos is always free, always available, always looking for somewhere to land. Don't be the place it lands. The third lesson is one of the most exhausting traps a person can fall into. Stop trying to prove yourself to people who aren't paying attention. There is a particular kind of tired that comes from this, from trying to demonstrate your value to someone who has already decided not to see it, showing loyalty to someone who doesn't show basic respect, explaining your intentions to someone who isn't listening, trying to be enough for someone who has already decided you're not. And the brutal truth that emotional regulation research keeps pointing to is this: lowering yourself does not help someone see your value. It just costs you your own sense of it. When you spend your energy performing for the wrong audience, everything suffers. Your goals lose focus. Your identity starts bending in directions that don't belong to you. The fire that used to drive you gets smaller and smaller because it's being used to fuel someone else's indifference. You are not here to convince anyone of your worth. You are here to build it, live it, and share it with people who can actually receive it. Pour yourself into the people who feel your presence, not the ones who make you constantly justify it. The fourth thing is something that looks like giving up from the outside, but is actually one of the most powerful moves a person can make. Walk away with dignity, even when it hurts. There comes a point where the strongest decision available to you isn't to fight harder, explain more clearly, or try one more time. It's to go quiet, to step back, not out of bitterness, not out of revenge, just out of a clear-eyed understanding that your value does not require anyone's permission to exist. Power dynamics research is clear on this. The person who can walk away without needing the last word, without needing the dramatic exit, without needing to be witnessed in their pain, holds an entirely different kind of authority than the person who stays past the point their soul has already left. Silence is not weakness. Silence is what you choose when you've outgrown the argument. When you realize that suffering is not the same thing as loyalty, that accepting mistreatment is not love, it's just familiarity dressed up as commitment. Yes, walking away hurts, but that pain is not evidence that you lost something essential. It's evidence that you're finally making space for something that actually belongs to you. And the fifth lesson is the one that ties everything together. Become someone you're genuinely proud of, not for anyone else, not for the people who overlooked you or the ones you're trying to prove something to, for yourself. Because the moment you commit to that, to building a version of yourself that you respect, everything starts to recalibrate. You speak differently. You move differently. The things that used to pull you off center start losing their grip. You stop chasing validation because you're no longer running on empty. You stop bending your identity to fit spaces it was never meant to fit. You stop negotiating your worth like it's something up for debate. Psychological research on identity and self-concept is consistent here. People who operate from a clear, internalized sense of who they are and what they stand for are measurably more resilient, more attractive to others, and more effective in every area of life. Not because they became perfect, because they became real. You don't build that kind of strength overnight. You build it the way you build anything durable, through consistent choices, repeated over time, that reinforce the same message to yourself. I matter enough to protect. I matter enough to choose. I matter enough to rise. And when you rise, you don't rise with noise. You rise with something quieter and far more permanent. A calm, settled, unshakable knowing of who you are. The kind that can't be taken from you. Because it wasn't handed to you, it was built. So let this land wherever it needs to land. If you felt invisible, if you felt unappreciated, if you've given pieces of yourself to people and places that gave nothing back, this is the reminder that you don't have to keep doing that. You are allowed to have standards. You are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to choose yourself. And the moment you actually do, life starts meeting you at the level you've decided to live at. If any part of this spoke to something real in you, take a breath, let it settle. And if you want more of this, more grounded, honest perspectives on building the kind of inner strength that actually holds, you know what to do. Subscribe. And let's keep going.